Okay, hello, and welcome to this eCampus News webinar, Exploring the Future of Data Centers in Higher Education. My name is Kevin Hogan. I am the Content Director for eCampus News, and I'm happy you are joining us today for what I know will be a very insightful and important conversation. This event is brought to you by Lenovo, with 20 years of education technology leadership and a team of experts focused exclusively on higher ed. Lenovo helps IT and educators create secure, simplified, and dynamic collaborative environments to help institutions thrive and students realize potential and exceed expectations. Now, before we get into our conversation, I'd like to take a minute to go over some of the features of the platform we're using for this event. The webinar is being recorded, so you don't have to worry about missing a thing. Within a few days, you'll receive an email message that contains a link to the recorded webinar, along with the PDF of any slides that we have. If you have a question or comment for us, please use the chat function that you see at the bottom of your screen. Also, feel free to use this to contact someone from the eSchool News team if you have a technical question. And I really do encourage, if you have a thought, opinion, or question for our panelists, it really helps drive the conversation in a way that you want it to go. And it really kind of helps us keep on top of where we want to take this conversation. So please chime in. So with these housekeeping items out of the way, let's get started with the conversation and some introductions. First with us today is Dr. Hernan Londano. Dr. Hernan currently serves as Lenovo's Chief Technology and Innovation Strategist. He is a distinguished leader in technology and education, known for his expertise in innovative academic solutions, cybersecurity, and strategic technology advancement. With over 2 decades of experience as Chief Technology Officer and Chief Information Security Officer in higher ed, he has a proven track record of driving impactful change. Dr. Londano has served as Chief Technology and Innovation Strategist at Dell Technologies, where he led transformative educational initiatives. He has also been a trusted advisor for several prominent cybersecurity organizations, including Vectra, Cyfort, and SANS Securing the Human. Also with us today is David Weldon. David is an award-winning editor, writer, and research analyst from the Boston area. He has worked in a full-time senior editorial capacity at several leading media companies, covering topics related to information technology and business management. As a freelancer, he has contributed to more than 100 publications and websites, writing white papers, ebooks, research reports, online courses, feature articles, news stories, scripts, executive profiles, and columns. And that's all just before lunch, right, David?
That's right.
His special areas of concentration are in technology, data management and analytics, business and finance, management practices, workforce and workplace trends, benefits and compensation, education, retirement, and healthcare. So, gentlemen, thank you so much for taking your time to share your insights with us today. We really appreciate it. I think at this time, we can really just kind of dive right into the weeds in our topic. It certainly is one that, unfortunately, we still kind of have to, mark things as pre-pandemic and post-pandemic. Here we are, thankfully, in what seems to be a post-pandemic phase of things. But really want to kind of get started and talk because of the massive changes that really have occurred over the past 5 years, both negative and positive, in terms of the management of campuses and higher education institutions. Maybe we'll start off and kind of get a general state of play from your perspectives on where our audience, those senior level executives who are managing campuses across this country, whether it's a community college in northern New England or a large state university down in the Southwest, what is that state of play when it comes to managing data? And Hernan, maybe we'll start with you from your perspectives.
It's Kevin, great to be here and great to share the stage with David as well. Yeah, definitely pandemic is an inflection point, right? So there's a lot of things that we knew previous to the pandemic, there were a lot of movements generally in education and in technology and education that were already taking place and kind of brewing before pandemic. And then pandemic hit, and it was a catalyst, right? It was an accelerator. What what that brought about was questions. What works and what doesn't? Because it was a moment where speed to market, if you will, the speed to execution was paramount. We all needed to pivot from traditional teaching and learning and traditional support to remote. And there was a stress test basically of every kind of architecture that had been built prior to pandemic. And that's really what happened through the pandemic. And then we came on the other end, and then we determined, well, there's some things that work well, and there are some things for which we were not ready. And we, I think we still in that kind of figuring out the things that really don't work well. There's some that definitely do. Communication systems were tested, and we know that now that we're ready to take on the remote hybrid kind of approach for communication. So that's what we're doing. What we're doing to this medium right now, but there's a lot of other things that still are present in campuses, right? We talk about technology. Data is one of those. So data centers, we're going to talk about data centers today for a little bit. Data is that central element that now is, where do we have it? How do we manage it? How do we secure it? How do we take care of privacy? There's a number of things related to data. And I think it continues to be an element of conversation, especially now that we are squarely in the era of AI. But we're going to talk a little bit about that too.
Yeah. Did David, does Fernand's words resonate with you?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think a couple of particular trends that we're seeing as a result of the pandemic and coming through that, one of which has been the extreme growth in remote learning demand. Uh, That's certainly not unique to education. All businesses and in every industry sector went through the same thing in order to continue doing business through the pandemic with our workforces, in many cases, forced to stay at home. We had to learn how to do things differently. Well, education had been toying with remote learning before that, but that just really boosted it full time. And something else that I'm wondering if we're going to see in terms of a trend over the next few years is there's a lot of discussion in the general public now about the cost of an education. Are colleges and universities worth the extreme amount of dollars that they're asking to get an education today? And I think education is going to have to react to that by taking steps to reduce the costs. And that means finding new efficiencies, new ways of doing things, and using technology to bring operational costs down. And the data center is a prime example of where that can happen, and new advanced technologies can be enablers to do that. Uh, I just read earlier today that the MIT leadership has done away with college tuition next year for all incoming students whose families make less than $200,000 a year. And if your family makes less than $100,000 a year, you get free tuition, free housing, free food, free books, free everything. That's a very noble, very generous offer from MIT. Kudos to them. But how does a college or university maintain a strategy like that? Where is the money going to come from that? What does that do to your overall operational budget? So, good luck to them. I'd like to see that program work really well. But of course, they're going to have to make some real tough decisions on where they can belt tighten. And that's the situation that all colleges and universities are in right now, too. Where can we find new efficiencies to reduce our operating costs, bring down the cost of an education so more people can afford it? One way to offset that is to increase the number of remote students. Obviously, a remote student does not cost as much to have be a part of your student body as an on-campus student. So that's one area. But again, that puts great demand on technology. So that's going to be the big challenge going forward.
Well, that was always one of the arguments, I would say 5 or 6 years ago when, when you do as I did a bit of due diligence to prepare for this event and talking about all the institutions that were going to the cloud at the end of the last decade. Um, wow, if you Google higher ed going to the cloud, that was that was all the talk. Um, the past couple months, the past couple years, and I know Hernan at Lenovo is probably at the forefront of a lot of this. Is uh, talking a little bit about bringing maybe some of that stuff back in. I mean, some of the elements of the data center might be more efficient, might be more cost effective if those things aren't in the cloud, but maybe sitting in a server room on campus.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I think there's also, Kevin, there are a few things that contribute to that movement, that repatriation of workloads, we call it. And the cloud, by the way, was a phenomenal movement. I think there was entire economies that were developed on the ability to do things in the cloud. So it was something phenomenal, and we didn't have anything else that was that flexible and that scalable, and that contributed to that growing incrementally for so many years. Few things here. When we talk about cloud today, everything is a cloud, right? We've moved already to public cloud and private cloud, which is your data center ends up being on premise, ends up being a private cloud. So everything is a cloud, and then you have multi-cloud strategies and other kinds of applications of cloud. And one of the things that uh, contributed to the fact that now we're coming back to the private cloud, which is the data center, is this mindfulness about the data. Right? We were not so concerned about the data a few years ago as we are today, and that's because of AI. So AI has done a number of different things for technology and for society, and but one of the things it's done is it's created this um, in interest on governing the data, right? So data governance is super important. And back in the day of the cloud, at the beginning, we used to send the data to the cloud. That's what we used to do. In other words, we used to send the data to the compute. And today, because we want to protect the data so much, and there is so much governance around it, now we bring the compute to the data, and we want to keep the data closer to us, right? We want to have it within our boundaries, if you will. And so all these other technologies for compute to make sure that we are able to have private clouds have been developed, and they're now very efficient. So hyperconvergence is one of those technologies we're talking about that today. A number of efficiencies have been achieved by creating these kinds of offerings for your private cloud, which is again your on-premise data center, and it's all centered around the data. And the term data center was created many many moons ago, and we didn't care so much about the data. Well, fast forward today, the data center or that private cloud is really centric to the data. And so this is where we are. I'll let David expand a little more, but I know we're going to get into hyperconvergence today, which is an amazing amount of efficiency packed into kind of a single offering.
Yeah, you're right. And I think many universities had the same experience that many businesses in private sector had with going to the cloud. Uh, Initially, there was so much interest in it that everybody was putting everything in the cloud. And then they realized that, well, everything shouldn't be in the cloud, and it's very expensive to put everything in the cloud. So we need to do a better job of prioritizing what do we put in the cloud, what do we keep on premises, how do we architect our systems so that we can move data around as we need to, we can access it as we need to, and we can keep it secure. But one of the things that AI has done is it's really improving the ability to manage the data center in terms of how you manipulate data, how you access it, and also the operation of the data center itself. For example, AI does a wonderful job at helping a university manage and monitor its energy needs in the data center. And if you can get really, really good at energy efficiency management, potential savings can be up to 40%. That's enormous, especially as colleges and universities look to find ways to trim costs and bring their budget more under control. Beyond that, in terms of the data itself, AI makes the data center more flexible, more scalable, more responsive. You just have much more control over the data, how you're using it, and who's using it. So it's really making tremendous improvements in terms of the data center operation.
Well, I'm impressed we got, I think, about 12 minutes into our conversation without mentioning AI, but we got there. And also just the mention of hyper-converged infrastructures, which, we all know that education love their acronyms. So, HCI does seem to be the one that seems to be, kind of emerging as, that next solution that our audience will probably keep finding, in their inbox. Any further details of how you can describe that and how that methodology works within their overall kind of, infrastructure, Hernan?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. So, listen, HCI, hyperconverged infrastructure is just an answer to what has been taking place in the data center. And that was, we were accustomed to what's called three-tier architecture, right? So your compute is separate from your storage and it is separate from your networking fabric. And they all require management, basically. And one thing that we don't have in higher education is we don't have a lot of staff and we don't have the ability to add them as needed. Traditionally the teams are formed and the members of the team stay for a very long time, but it's difficult to add one more person if there is more things to do, let's say at the data center. And so it became a little difficult for IT professionals to manage these data centers, especially thinking about scalability, right? There was more workloads added over time to the data center, which require more and more nodes to be added. And then the management of all these, again, three-tier architectures became a little difficult. So the answer to that is, hey, why don't we put everything in a single package? Why don't we integrate everything so that its management is simplified? And so that's basically what HCI did, and did a fantastic job because now you have in a single package, you have your compute, your storage, and your networking, and you can manage it in a simplified way as a single platform. And scaling it is absolutely super easy. You just happen to add one more node or more nodes of that kind of packaging, and your scalability happens really fast. And talking about David's comments, higher education has the mission to provide, the product, if you will, the widget is educational services. And like any other industry needs to do it in an efficient way. And efficiencies are found everywhere. Well, the data center is one of those places too. And not only it can help to avoid cost, I wouldn't say save cost, but it avoids the cost. But it also helps to a better student experience, right? When you remove latency, when you remove the kind of repairs, then the teaching and learning process can be so much more smooth, and students like that, and they have the tendency to be very consumer experience oriented. If the experience is bad, they can just go someplace else and shop for that widget called education someplace else. So the contribution from the data center, although sometimes it's hidden and even maybe intangible, it's a very significant and at the very end.
Yeah, picking up on that point, that's an excellent point. One of the great benefits of artificial intelligence tools on campus is the ability of better engaging with students. Many colleges and universities are extremely large. They have thousands, if not tens of thousands of students. An individual student can feel like just a number. They can feel like the college or university doesn't reach out to them, doesn't communicate with them, doesn't understand their goals, their needs, their wants, or what have you. And that can be a very frustrating experience for students. And Some leading colleges and universities are starting to use AI as a tool to better reach out and engage with those students, to communicate with them, to understand what their needs are on campus so that they can have a better college experience. They can use AI tools to identify trends in what the student is participating in, researching, communicating about. They can identify needs within demographic segments of the student population so that they can provide services targeted to those demographic groups. It's a great way for the college or university to better engage the student and help improve their educational experience. And I think that's very important in today's day where so many students are questioning, is all of this worth it? Should I continue? Should I go somewhere else? Am I at the right school? Are they offering me the right things? Do I feel at home and welcome here? Or do I feel like just another number? So AI has great capabilities to help in those ways as well.
Yeah. Let me just add something there. Having as David brought up an amazing point, and that is students have never been shy about providing feedback. They've always done it. They're absolutely very vocal. That all happened to be unstructured data. It's conversational elements, and they do it through a number of different platforms and mechanisms that at the end, just a couple of years ago, was very difficult to actually compile all of that and do real sentiment analysis, for example. What is it that we're doing well and what aren't we doing so good? There were tools. The tools were not really very flexible, and frankly, they were not time. It took a lot of time to do these analysis. Well, today that's done with one click. You basically can aggregate all these conversations, if you will, all these structured data, and there's endless numbers of knowledge extraction tools powered by AI. And you can get really granular about these things. Not only you can identify sentiment, but you can also begin to talk about what are the actions that I'm going to be taking, right? And that's all based on what AI can do. So sentiment analysis, consumer experience, which we call in higher education, student experience, I think it's becoming one of those very front of mind kind of workloads to address the challenges of higher education today.
So as the data center technologies continue to become more sophisticated and explosively more sophisticated, you can have what I would describe almost a meta analysis. You're saying of the experience of what's happening on campus. And one thing that we've seen here at eCampus News too is that just the dramatic, almost violent transformation of students who both recognize, David, what you're saying in terms of the cost, and also the expectation to do that anytime, anywhere sort of education that we talked about as a promise for I don't know how long I've been covering ed tech, 15 years. Like, you're going to be able to do it from anywhere. It's like, well, now you can do it from anywhere. But how effective is that, and how much more of an in-person experience should be involved with that? It's almost kind of mimicking what we're talking about when it comes to the data centers, about what do you bring back in and what do you keep out there for them to use. Now, maybe I'll ask a little bit about some of the challenges that institutions face when transitioning to some of these new data center models. Can either or both of you talk to that?
I can start and then I'll let Hernan pick up. Well, one of the big challenges, of course, is so many colleges and universities are not new. They've been around forever. There's a lot of ivy growing on those brick walls, and a lot of their systems are quite old. They're relying on a lot of legacy systems. A lot of schools they're trying to go to complete total digital transformation, but they're not there yet. They have legacy systems trying to interact with modern systems, and that can be a very mixed bag experience. So there's a lot of trial and error there, a lot of frustration, a lot of challenges, a lot of cost. So that those are some of the things that they're dealing with. They're also trying to make the intelligent decisions on what to put in the cloud, what to keep in premise, how much funding do they have available to make the improvements that they want to make. Who are they competing with on campus and for those dollars? IT is competing for every dollar that it gets with other departments in the university who have other project needs as well. So modernization projects are not cheap. So they have to convince the university of what is the ROI on these investments. We have to do them smartly so that we do them right once and not repeat themselves. And they have to do it with an eye to the future so that whatever improvements and modernization that they're doing will carry them for a while and will take advantage of the new advanced technologies that are coming into play now and will be over the next few years.
Yeah, a few things I can add to David's comments. I'm gonna leave ROI for last. I'll come back to ROI in a second, but um, from having been a CTO and actually having done with a team a data center transformation at a very tactical level, there are some things that it's not easy, right? There's things like you know, technology dependencies. This is something that traditionally is not done unless you're going to do some type of transformation. What systems have dependencies from which systems? At the hardware level, at the software level, that was back in the day, my days. And now we have on top of that this data fabric that is everywhere. So when you think about, I am going to migrate from three-tier architecture to hyperconvergence, right? And also we need to basically retire the old data center and go into a new data center model. It's not just bringing the equipment and powering the equipment and all of that. You have to do that in a phase approach. What pieces of the data center can we shut down first? And it used to be just hardware and software. What depends on what? And now is okay. And what data is passing through these systems, and it's everywhere. So that's one of the major challenges is your dependencies tree for software, hardware, and your data. That would be one challenges that I can list. Going to the ROI piece, I think is interesting because in some ways the uh, finance approach to technology consumption plays a heavy role in what you can do with a data center or not. And we know that there's two main ways of consuming technology today through your budget allocations. Either you use CapEx or you use OpEx. And now today we have models, consumption models that we didn't have before. We used to just buy the technology back in the day. And now we can consume the technology. Let's talk about data center technology like HCI. You can basically consume it as a private cloud with also the financial cloud model where it's pay as you go. Somebody is in your data center, but somebody else is actually managing that for you. And that's a decision to be made now. It used to be that you didn't have to make the decision, but today, before you go to that, you have to think about, is the operating budget of the university amicable to OpEx, or is my CFO more amicable to CapEx? And there are decisions that need to be made there. And the final point that I would make about challenges is definitely change management. And that is with absolutely every piece of technology that you decide to transform or implement. You need to manage not only your community, your students, your faculty, your staff, but in the case of the data center, you need to manage your technical team. Are they bound to a specific flavor of technology? Because that's what they've been doing for 20 years and they are really good at it. And there's this new flavor of technology that's coming up that is more efficient, but it requires them to transform, to unlearn and relearn. And that part, the human element of that conversation is not entirely easy.
It's interesting. I've been covering technology management for probably about 30 years now. And going back every one of those 30 years, my colleagues and I would probably all agree that the industry that is the slowest to embrace change is education.
We have some, I tell you one of the things which is might not be relevant for this webinar, but one of the things that I've been surprised about education, particularly K-12, is the speed which they have uh, begin to adopt Gen AI for teaching and learning. K-12, they have been absolutely flash to do it, and I've never seen that before. But I agree with you, David. Generally, education it's not the fastest to make transitions to newer and emerging technologies.
Well, I know that one of the issues, even beyond the pandemic, the number one issue was which was a pain point for our readers and our listeners. It comes to the security of their data systems, and maybe we could talk a little bit about how modern data center solutions address those, just the number of institutions that have been hacked, either by through technical hacking or by phishing or by human interactions. Um, does HCI or any of these data center things need an additional layer of security? Maybe we could talk a little bit about what the state of play is when you're maybe bringing some of these systems back in. Is that making things safer, or is that introducing new sort of openings into networks? Talk a little bit, Hernan, maybe to start off about that security aspect of these changing data center models.
Yeah, absolutely. I think one argument that I used to make when I was back in my days of the CTO and the technology state was different than it is now is that the hyperscalers who began making these investments in the public cloud, they were criticized early because of the lack of security in their offering, and they reacted very fast. So at some point, hyperscalers did a fantastic job at addressing the foundational elements of securing your data over your tenant, whatever you want to call it. And now we have this movement back of all of these workloads to the on-premise data center. That created a phenomenon, I think, and that was the compliance element of this conversation, right? And that was there were regulatory bodies in charge of regulating pieces of higher education, like if you had a teaching hospital, for example, so a university with medical practice, then you had HIPAA compliance that applied to what you were doing. If a university is processing transactions of credit cards and financial transactions, there's PCI, and that's just to mention two. All of this data that is coming back, and all these regulatory bodies together with the cyber liability insurance industry determined that we cannot continue to have the same security posture in higher education that has been very relaxed. We need to, as industries, we need to apply that a little bit of pressure, and that's been taking place. And so, if you want to get cyber liability insurance underwritten by the carrier, you need to have a of offer much more mature cybersecurity posture that you could have had in 10 or 15 years ago. So on-premise security for data centers and data it has improved, but it also has improved because these newer technologies are packaging are being built with intrinsic security and even privacy, right? And that's the advance that has taken place over the probably say the past 10 years. So when you think about a single package like hyperconvergence, and you think about securing that single package, as opposed to having to secure your network layer different from your storage layer, different from your compute layer, then it becomes much, much easier to provide security for that. And by the way, regulators really like that because if you talk about PCI, for example, and you say, I am processing credit card transactions in this segment, the whole segment of your technology stack is in scope. That's what we say scope is in scope of PCI compliance. Well, if you had your network layer and your compute layer and your storage layer separately, doing that compliance was very difficult. But now you have it on a single package, so regulators love it. Um, Cybersecurity tools that you lay on top of that do a much better job because it's a single package that you're securing, not three different layers with three different tools. So I think we're doing much better in terms of approaching cybersecurity conversation Unfortunately, the bad guys move much faster than we ever move in any one of the industries. So it continues to be a challenge, but it's not the same challenge that we had 15 years ago.
Yeah, battles are won, but the war's never over, right, David?
Right, exactly. Yeah, it's interesting. AI, of course, is accused of creating increased security risks, but it also can uh, increase your security defenses. And an organization has to use AI wisely, and an organization also has to do a very good job of vetting the vendors that they work with, so that they are providing AI capabilities that the college and university really needs to keep the data safe. Just using a product without some customization, probably not the way to go. You really need product to be customized to protect your student data. Not much of student data is personally identifiable information. That's really critical stuff that has to be kept very safe. The best way to do that, of course, is to keep it on premises. Pardon me one second. So that it does not become at risk. Apologize for that. Um, but then you lose the gains that going to the cloud brings you with scalability and flexibility. So you need an intelligent strategy that allows you to keep some of your data on premises, move other to the cloud, but keep everything as safe as possible. And so I think you need to vet a vendor very carefully, and that vendor needs to play a key role in uh, customizing the AI tool so that it identifies where are your vulnerabilities to your data. Point them out to us. Tell us what we need to do. Tell us what is at risk. Tell us how we can make it less at risk and we can protect. So I think that's a step that perhaps many colleges and universities don't take, but really should.
Very good point. And I think a little bit of what you're mentioning there is too that as much as the technology is hugely important in terms of the security of human behavior, as well when it comes to the use of the data center and where that data is coming from, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And one point that David brought up that is interesting about AI, and I haven't spoken too much about AI today, but it's definitely part of the conversation, is that when you think about the use of AI in the context of cybersecurity, and it's the first context I'm going to be talking about. Well, we can use it for defense, but bad guys use it offensively. It's absolutely, it has two different uses. The difference, and people sometimes ask me this question: why do the bad guys advance faster than the good guys? And that is because the good guys, us, we are bound by some rules, right? We want to make sure that the use of AI is ethical and is responsible, and we want to make sure that we remove biases, and we want to make sure before we use it that it's not going to harm anybody. But bad guys don't have rules. The only rule is they don't have any rules, and so they all the time they will advance much faster. When it comes to the like the tactical element of the data center and how AI is utilized, David already talked about this, which is fantastic because it requires a lot of cognitive power to take all the metrics from a data center. A data center provides tons and tons of data related to just how the data center is operating, and it's absolutely very difficult to correlate and create some insights, except we have AI now. And so these things happen real time. They used to happen near real time before, and before that, it was not nowhere near real time. But now all this telemetry that comes out of data centers is ingested by systems that are powered by AI. And so you see adjustments of workloads, for example. You may have a node on a cluster that is oversubscribing and is eating too much energy because there's too much on it. And AI is moving that workload to another cluster or to another node and say cluster that is idle. And so the balancing of that creates energy efficiency. We didn't have that before. We have AI that allows to do self-healing, AI that can predict there's something going on with this machine. We should do something to repair it before. an operator actually takes care of that, and there is some protocols and some things that are done, and so the system actually heals itself and creates efficiency. There's all these things that are now possible with AI. And talking about efficiency, we started with that. That efficiency in a university is passed on to the mission. So it supports a better mission, which is teaching and learning, and it creates an overall better student experience.
Well, speaking of, the human condition and change management, and Hernani, you mentioned that a little bit earlier about some of the challenges there. Um, is Are there issues when it comes to bringing some of these data center technologies back in on campus? I mean, in terms of hiring new staff, maybe professional development for current staff. Does it mean more people? Does it mean less people? And again, the AI trope now is that it will eliminate the need for human interaction, although the reality seems to be maybe the opposite for some of these things. Talk a little bit about what it means when you have a data center model that is coming back up onto campus, or this HCI setup. What does it mean from on the human side of managing that?
Yeah. Listen, we're approaching, when I say we, I say the noble. We're approaching this conversation with a ton of empathy, because a human element in this conversation has to be present all the time. But part of the mission of a company like Lenovo is we need to make technology that is efficient, that is good, that allows companies to be flexible and dynamic, and in this case, higher education. So, what's in the front of our brains when we create technologies is we need to make things easier. Easier for whom? Well, for the humans, right? So when we are doing these new models, when we're creating these new technologies, we're always keeping in mind efficiency, because we know, for example, in the case of higher education, if you go from 3D architecture to HCI, you're not going to hire a HCI expert. You're going to have to, take you guys that used to take care of the 3D architecture, and we're going to have to do some development and have them help you with the new methodology. Hopefully, like we say in IT, they will drink the Kool-Aid and they will move from 3-tier to HCI. But it is part of what technology does inherently. If you create technologies that do not evolve, people will never consume them. So that's something that is always going to happen. More efficiency, it will always impact the human element. Always, 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 because there is efficiency. What we see now with AI, to address that point, is that AI moves at an exponential rate. So in a way, it's hitting people faster than they have the ability to react. And this happened many times. Cloud was one of those movements. Everybody thought all data center operators were going to lose their jobs because everybody was going to go to the cloud, and it didn't happen. And we had the ability to react and reskill and upskill people to be able to address the cloud challenges. AI is moving faster, so that's the element that everybody's having difficulty with. But I think overall, AI will continue to enhance the equation. The question for us as an industry is, how do we help the human advance a little faster, catch up with that impact of AI in a better way?
And of course, all of this is putting, pardon me, increased pressure on the IT leader. The college or the university CIO or CTO has to understand not only what are the advanced technologies that are coming on board now that they can tap and take advantage of. More importantly, what is the specific improvement to a function or process on campus that investing in that technology is going to do in the first place? We don't want to be adopting technologies for the sake of saying, oh, yes, we have it, check off the box. What is it doing to increase efficiency, productivity, to reduce costs, to improve the entire process? And if the IT leader can't sell top leadership in the organization on what is it doing, they're going to get the approval for increasing the budget to make those investments in the first place. So the IT leader has to be very savvy today. They really have to understand not only the technologies, they really have to understand intimately the workings on campus of the college or university itself. what can I apply technology to so that we are doing a better job at what we have been doing all along? And what will be the return on the investment that I can point to sell this? So that's a huge challenge right there. It's just the leadership issue, and the change management piece is a big part of
David, let me double echo what you said. That's I think it's an amazing point, and that is traditionally the IT leader in higher education was leading the technology element of a university, which many thought was disconnected from the mission of the university. In other words, everybody in a university back in the day used to believe that, hey, the IT guys just wanted they just want the shiny toys and whatever. We don't even know what they're today. That's changed dramatically, and IT leaders are actually business leaders. They probably spend more time on the general business of the university than they spend on the IT business of the university. And I think that is a remarkable innovation and move that has helped higher education over the past 10 years. To the degree that leaders can do that, it is a lot easier to say, I need to improve or transform my data center. And if anybody away from the technology field asks the question, why, they will have an easy answer because they understand the global nature of the academic business of the institution. 15 years ago, that was difficult. The answer would have been because I need more throughput. So what? It didn't mean anything for anybody, only for him. Today, we're in a different place, but every day it continues to be a challenge. Not everybody has made that transition.
Yeah. So, question came in from the audience here. For significant data center upgrades that are looking to support AI capabilities, could you please discuss the power and the electricity challenges for institutions and how those sort of things can be addressed? So, really heavy duty kind of facility question there.
Yeah, yeah. Well, listen, I was reading some numbers earlier today, as David was, I guess. One of the things that I read today is that in the past quarter, 50% of servers that shipped globally were GPU accelerated. In other words, half of the servers that were shipped had GPUs in them. It probably the first time that this ever happened. It means really, if you think about this in a different terms, there is a totally new market for compute. There is the traditional compute, which is like 50%, and there is the AI compute that is another 50%. So the increase in power, it's incredible. And so, some of the things, obviously, hyperconvergence it's a way to address power concerns even before AI, and HCI can be GPU accelerated. Um, you have to think about what kind of AI workloads you're going to be supporting at your institution, and that will help you understand. And for example, in the case of Lenovo, we can sit down with anyone you and figure that out. But just to give you an example, if you're thinking about knowledge extraction, for example, so let's say you have a whole bunch of documents, conversational documents, and you want to use AI now to extract the knowledge using generative AI. You can use AI systems that are not too beefy, if you will. But as an institution, if what you're doing is you're doing research and you're, for example, doing model training or fine tuning, data requirements are different, and it takes really a deep technical conversation to be able to say you're going to have to double your power or cooling requirements, or from some cases, for example, you're going to have to go to liquid cooling because the kind of server that you want is no longer available in any other form factor but liquid cooling, because the heat generated by that kind of hardware, it's impossible to cool by air, right? So there is a lot of different things depending on what workloads you're trying to support. Yeah, there's cases where you're going to be able to support your workloads with an AI PC with a workstation, and for that you're going to need to do too much. But I said If you're onto the model training and fine tuning, it's a different story. And I would say the best thing you can do is reach out, to those that have the expertise. Certainly, yeah, I think you will have my information. Reach out to me. We'll connect you. We'll make sure to have that conversation in a very deep technical way.
Yeah. David, any lessons from other verticals when it comes to that, or what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I was just going to say there are great advantages to using AI to try to improve your center efficiency and to improve energy management. And one of the best ways it does that is that AI will in real time monitor your data center operations. It knows when it needs to cool, to go into cool mode. It needs to know how to resource allocations better, and it can adjust what it needs to automatically so that you are improving the efficiency of your energy systems. That can help reduce your energy use in the long run, and it can also help prevent the data center from overheating, which I certainly wouldn't want that. So AI can be a great help in that respect.
Now, I knew the toughest part of my job this afternoon would be to end the conversation. We could go on for a while. There's so many different aspects of this. But as of the few minutes that we have left, I think we've really kind of established very well what the state of play is right now when it comes to these emerging models. Maybe I'll ask both of you to kind of look into your crystal balls now. Um, Talk about what role these new data center uh, methodologies will play when it comes to technologies like quantum computing and edge computing, some of the kind of really cutting edge technologies beyond AI, or maybe in conjunction with AI, that will be affecting institutions going forward. David, I'll put you on the hot seat first.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. Quantum computing is a fascinating topic, and I always kind of cringe when I talk about it because it has such incredible capabilities if we can develop it properly. Latest estimates I've seen are that we're probably about 4 to 5 years away from being able to really use quantum computing the way you would like to be able to do so. But the thing that scares me are the security implications of quantum computing. Um, the biggest concern with security, cybersecurity, and quantum is that it would enable bad threat actors to unencrypt data essentially instantly. And it would eliminate protections on all encrypted data, no matter how it's used. For those who aren't aware, data is encrypted by putting mathematical problems in front of getting at the data that you want to access that are essentially impossible to cipher and solve. And it would take a current computer today literally years to come up with the solution to the mathematical problem to get past that firewall and into the data that it's trying to get at. If we are successful at developing quantum computing that it could be used in a practical sense, uh, you could unencrypt those mathematical firewalls in a matter of seconds and unencrypt the data behind it. So the security ramifications are huge. And that's why China is the number one player in the world making investments in computing research, I mean, in quantum research. And they are also the number one player in the world making investments in acquiring encrypted data from all kinds of sources. And it's stockpiled on that data for the very, very near future when we've resolved our quantum problems and use it and we can start unencrypting that data. And then they will have an enormous data superiority over everyone else. Um, I always lose a little bit of sleep over quantum, but hopefully that answered your question. I'm not sure if I got.
Yeah, absolutely. And Hernan,
Yeah, I mean, I agree with David. Quantum is one of those incredible technologies that is going to transform yet again, the world. Two things about quantum. One is in terms of data centers, right? In the context of the conversation about how would it impact architectures and how would it impact a data center investments today. So we have not yet gotten to a point where we have a standard architecture for quantum computers. So there's maybe about a dozen of different architectures, and they'll look different because they all approach quantum in a different way. So it's difficult to project what a data center with quantum computing would look like, because it could look like this depending on this architecture, or like that depending on all the other architectures. The advancement is incredible. I think this year the IBM had the fastest quantum computer with 480 qubits, and suddenly Atom Computing out of California unveiled a 1,180 quantum bit computer recently. So it's more than double the capacity. And so I don't know, we're already speaking about a Moore's law when it comes to quantum computing, possibly. I agree with David. It'll take probably about 5 years before we can begin to operationalize quantum computing in the same way we approach classical computing. In terms of cybersecurity, David's comments are totally on point. So much so that we as a nation have been worried about that for a number of years now. And so NIST, in case anybody in the audience is not familiar with that, issued a request for a kind of a competition for people to create quantum resistant encryption algorithms, because they already see that, once quantum is operationalized, it's going to be easy to decrypt uh, previously encrypted data through classical algorithms. And so last I checked, I think there were five finalist algorithms, and maybe one of them is it's already kind of the leading algorithm. So there is a promise that yes, cybersecurity is going to be a thing, but there is a promise that maybe we're already taking steps to address it. In terms of architecture and investments, it will be difficult until we have a kind of a semi-clear standard as to which is the architecture for quantum computing that everybody's going to use.
Well, great stuff. And I see that our time is just about up, so I'm going to wrap things up here. Once again, I'd like to thank Hernan and David for a really informative presentation. I think a lot of insights. I'll speak for the audience, and I think they have a lot to think about when it comes to these new data center models and how it applies to their institutions. And I think you helped them out with some good first steps there. I'd also like to thank the audience members for joining us as well. Got a good question out of somebody, and I hope that you found this to be productive. Now, as a reminder, you'll get an email within the next few days that contains a link to this recording along with the slides. Thanks again, everybody, for participating, and have a great day. Hernan, David, thanks very much.